Hey guys, it's Tuesday, and I'm Emery, and we're talking about the lesbian community. Lesbians. I dig it. So I really liked Christopher's video this week. The disclaimer stands. This is my personal experience, and everyone's is different, and keep an open mind. I would hope that you do that just in general. I haven't had a bad experience with the lesbian community. I was a part of that community for a really long time. I've never really been able to generalize. I made the mistake of searching trans men and lesbians, and the first thing that came up is Dirty White Boy 67. I don't advise you to go visit that website. Dirt is a self-identified butch lesbian who hates trans men and says that most trans men have been tweener lesbians at one point. And the truth is that this person, Dirt, has no idea what they're talking about. It's very easy to generalize and to pick up on what it looks like on the surface and say this is how it is. You know, I once identified as a lesbian because I thought that that's what I must be because I am female, apparently, and I like women, apparently. I wasn't the whole time. It just gave me like my niche. And I was just talking to a friend about this. My friend in New York, Christine. I'll leave her blog down in the about section. We were a part of the same lesbian community here in town. And if I hadn't had a place to go when I was younger, you know, like the LGBT Rainbow Alliance is what we had out here. If I hadn't been like, oh, well, I'm obviously a lesbian and this is where the lesbians go, I wouldn't have found my community. So, you know, I'm grateful for that. You know, topics like this, for me, are difficult because you can't generalize and say that the community is this way in any group. But yeah, there is a group of people who think that trans men are insecure lesbians, or that trans men are misogynists, and that they shouldn't trespass on lesbian territory. But I think it's so silly. I don't even really find it offensive because there are two types of people in this world. There are fearful people and there are open-hearted people. And whether or not you're a lesbian doesn't really have anything to do with that, and whether or not you're trans doesn't really have anything to do with that. But no, when I came out, I didn't have any questioning or anything. If anything, more of the quote-unquote lesbians who felt more genderqueer came to me and were talking to me about it. And for me, being a part of the LGBT community, Q, has been an amazing thing for the last 15 years. I'm going to be 26 this year, and I came out when I was 12. I asked my girlfriend about it, so this is what Jess has to say. The lesbian community is obviously a group that a lot of FTMs relate with to an extent, and I think that personally, that's their stigma with lesbians and trans guys, because you know there's a belief that lesbians fetishize FTMs because privilege of straight relationships, but they still see trans guys as girls. I also think that there are probably girls like that, but mostly sexuality is fluid, and just because someone identifies as lesbian doesn't mean they will never like a guy. And just because it's a trans guy doesn't mean anything at all. Lesbians and trans guys should get along because they're all a part of the same community. And there's always exceptions to every rule, and there's always assholes. She gets me. My girlfriend has dated women, and there's definitely a stigma around that. There's a stigma around women, or I guess, yeah, we'll say women, who have dated women and then start dating a male identified person. And it's really unfair, and it's really limiting, and it's really hurtful and kind of scary. I don't have any doubts about whether or not she sees me as male. Of course, we had that conversation, like, look, I'm a guy, and I am in no way, shape, or form female. I have feminine characteristics, and I'm not ashamed of them, but I would have the same characteristics was I born cis, and I'm not a female. And I just want to make sure that you're not a lesbian because this isn't going to work if you are. But no, she identifies as pansexual. And it's even hard for me to say, like, this isn't going to work if you're a lesbian, because that's just another word that we give people. Like, yeah, there are people who are lesbians, like women who like women solely. But just because someone has identified as a lesbian in the past doesn't mean that they don't like men, or that they won't like you, or that they aren't capable of it. It may, but nothing is set in stone. Well, some things are set in stone. But you get what I'm saying? There's room for exploration, and if you haven't explored these things, if you haven't met the right person, if you're not sure, then, there is a possibility. I've mentioned this before, where, like, there are trans men who don't identify as 100% male and date within the lesbian community, and lesbians who don't identify as 100% lesbian and date trans men. And this is something that that group of people who identify as true scum, is that what it is? It's something that really scares the shit out of some people, because, like, if you're one way, if you're not 100% male, then that makes people look at me like I'm not 100% male. And that's just silly. That's like, oh, well, if you're a murderer, then I have blue eyes too, and everyone's going to think I'm a murderer. It makes about as much sense. But I understand why it's scary, you know? I didn't like identifying as lesbian because there are lesbians who give that term a bad name, or like butch. Like when I think butch, I think of something specific, and that's not how I wanted to be seen because that's not who I was. But I can't get mad at someone who identifies as butch because I don't. Like, we're all different. Don't you learn that, like, in kindergarten, preschool? Be yourself. Everyone's different. And then you, like, draw a picture of yourself. Purple. Just me. I like to think that we're all part of the same human community. The term queer is becoming more and more popular because it leaves room for exploration. It's not like, oh, I have a crush on this trans guy, and then all your friends are like, whoa, I thought you were a lesbian, or like, oh, he must be this, he must be that. It's like, we're all just fucking people, and get over it. That doesn't, like, minimalize you being male. Just because a self-identified lesbian, is attracted to you, that doesn't mean that they're not seeing you as male. Just because they identify as a lesbian doesn't mean it's not going to work out, because they may have an open enough heart, or a fluid enough sexuality, is a better way to put it, to still remain comfortably attracted to you emotionally and physically. It happens. But if she doesn't like you because you're trans or because you're male, then you don't want that anyway, do you? Lesbians. I like lesbians. I like cool lesbians. I like people, really, as long as they're not a bunch of dicks. Stash.